Welcome. This is the West Region Host Meetup for the Game On Hosting Essentials series. This is everything you could possibly need to be ready for the World Cup, no matter which host city you are in or around. And we've got a great program for you today. Why that's replaying, I don't know. All right, first up today, we are going to have Mackenzie Chase and Alyssa Stinson from Expedia Group talk about the rulebook, aka the rules and regulations all of us have to follow and all the different places that we host. There's quite the patchwork, so this is going to be a really helpful session. Then we are going to have it was going to be a panel, but we had a speaker emergency. So I'm going to have a lovely chat with Julie from Avalara about the defense line, some of the risky things and blind spots we tend to see when hosting. After that, I'm going to take everybody through the S.P.R.I.N.K.L.E method, which is all about guest communication for a really successful stay. My teammate Blythe is going to go over beyond the final whistle, which is all about how to bring these guests back, get those good 5-star reviews, and get referrals. Those repeats, referrals, reviews, the 3 R's as I like to call them. And then we're going to have a great panel with the Washington Host Alliance. And my teammate Dana is going to moderate that. I'm Alexa Nada. I am the co-founder of Rent Responsibly. If you're new to Rent Responsibly, we are an education and community platform that provides a ton of resources for hosts anywhere, no matter how long you've been doing this or how many properties you rent or manage. I will have a ton of resources for you today in the chat, and then we'll point you to some additional libraries throughout as well. So you're in the right place. Welcome. Let's get started. Mackenzie and Alyssa, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. My name is Alyssa Stinson, and I am the Senior Manager of Government Affairs for California with Expedia Group and Vrbo. And with me today, I have my colleague, Mackenzie.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to be here with everyone. I am a senior manager of government and corporate affairs at Expedia Group and Vrbo as well, covering the Northwest, including Washington, where I have the great joy of residing.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk to you about tips to find your short-term rental requirements, local requirements, and regulations based on the 3 host cities that we have in the West region, and then some best practices and reminders for responsible hosting, including obviously looking at the Game On website that Rent Responsibly has put together.
So it's really important to know the local regulations for the jurisdiction where you host a short-term rental. We do anticipate seeing some increased scrutiny and perhaps greater enforcement around short-term rentals around the World Cup. Of course, it's a very, very exciting event and a great opportunity for the cities that are hosting games, but we expect there to be another side of that coin. So we want to make sure everyone is prepared and it works for everyone.
Yeah, so right now we're going to walk through just a few highlights in each region. As you can imagine, there are more than 2 cities in each region and each area, but we pulled the top or like the bigger 2, or the most relevant 2, and then we'll take it from there. But we also then later walk through how you can find your additional regulations to make sure that if you're not in either LA or Inglewood, for example, in the LA area, that you can dive into that. So in the LA area, the city of Los Angeles has a home sharing ordinance that is limited to primary residences only. So you can share your home up to 120 days if you are in your primary residence. And there's an option to extend that cap to further out, but you do have to go through a permitting and application process for that. You must also make sure that your permit and registration information is shared on your listing. And that is, under scrutiny with the city right now as well. So just to make sure that everyone is paying attention to that requirement and you have all of that information readily available on your listing so everyone can see it. There are also obviously very clear noise, occupancy, and just general guest conduct requirements that are important to check out on the city's website. And then make sure that you're also paying attention to any like TOT tax requirements that are associated with that as well. And then the city of Inglewood, which is where SoFi Stadium is, there are some pretty stringent requirements around short-term rentals there as well. They must hold a valid permit, of course, and are designated as three different categories of hosted short-term rentals, unhosted short-term rentals, and vacation rentals. STRs, or permanent residences of the primary owner, and unhosted rentals are limited to 90 nights per year. Vacation rentals, however, are must be owned by a permanent resident of the city of Inglewood and within 1,000 feet of your primary residence. So if you own a second home that is just down the street from your primary residence, that can be a vacation rental through the city. But all of this information and much more is available on the city websites for these two cities and any city that is not listed here as well. And then for the Bay Area, we've pulled the city of San Francisco and the city of San Jose. I know that most of the activities around the World Cup are going to be happening down in Santa Clara and Levi Stadium, but there are some fan activation happenings in the city of San Francisco, so we pulled that as well. Similar to the other California cities, we have the primary residence requirement, this requirement around the number of nights, unhosted versus hosted nights, and what you're doing around those is very important. Make sure that you're doing these quarterly reports as well to the planning department and not hitting that night cap while you're doing these guests. And then in the city of San Jose, similarly, hold a valid permit and restricted to 180 days per year of unhosted stays.
Coming up north to Seattle, for the city of Seattle, where the stadium is, operators are required to have a valid license. On the bright side, license turnarounds are fairly rapid, so there's still plenty of time to get one if you don't already have one. Licenses are limited to a max of 2 per person, and that's only if you reside within the city of Seattle, because you may have one short-term rental, which is your primary residence, and one short-term rental, which is not. So if you reside outside of Seattle, you can still have one. Again, they do have a pretty rapid review of those, so I would encourage you to do so very soon if you are planning to operate a short-term rental in the city of Seattle during the World Cup and have not secured a license, but there's still time, definitely. City of Bellevue, across the lake, allows short-term rentals in multifamily buildings up to a density cap. So there are still licenses available provided your particular building hasn't reached its density cap of over 20%, but short-term rentals in single-family homes are not permitted in the city of Bellevue. There are also operating guidelines for both of those jurisdictions. Encourage you to take a look at those. But if you've been operating a rental for a while, I am confident that you are familiar and well acquainted with those. If you don't happen to live in one of the 6 cities that we have outlined, it's really important to take a look at the local regulations for the jurisdiction where you do operate a short-term rental. So the easiest way to do that is to navigate to the official city website and just do a search for short-term rental, vacation rental, home share, or any other locally used terms. I know there are different terms of arts in different regions where to refer to the same thing. So take a look and peruse that. The city might very likely have a specific web page set up that talks about the operating standards, how someone would get a permit or license, any tax requirements, tax collection and remittance requirements, and all that information could be there. The other really smart thing to check is the actual municipal code, and the places that we typically see short-term rental regulations within municipal code is the business licensing section, in zoning and planning sections, and in taxes specifically around transient lodging taxes or TOT in California. Again, this is another thing where there tends to be a local term of art. It's also very important, especially in the West, where counties are a thing, to take a look at your county regulations in addition to your city regulations. Sometimes counties have additional standards or expectations for short-term rentals, and this is especially important if you happen to be operating in an unincorporated area, so you're outside of a city municipal boundary. My colleague Alyssa also made a good point earlier when we were talking about this, that if it's overwhelming, if you're not sure where the short-term regulations might be available, just pick up the phone and call the city clerk. I'm sure they'd be happy to help direct you to either the right department to get acquainted with any licensing, permitting, operating standards, but also point you to the right part of the website or the code so you can see everything in black and white and get familiar in print.
Awesome. Yes. And as we look at just additional resources, and make sure that you have everything you need, no matter what city you're in, the safest approach is just to confirm your zoning, whether you're registered, and when you're required to register, display your license number on every listing and stay under any night caps for unhosted stays. It's also important to make sure that you are a good neighbor. What we don't want to happen is for any incidents to happen while you're hosting World Cup guests or any guests for that matter. And make sure that the house rules are clear around noise, parking, trash, and guest limits to make sure that everything is protected and you stay compliant as a host. And then we've obviously partnered with Rent Responsibly to offer these local guides, house rule templates, message templates, etc., on the Game On website. So more information can be found there. And then if you have any other questions, we can direct that to government affairs at verbo.com if you have any questions around the government affairs side of things, at least. And we obviously also encourage you to connect with your local host alliance to stay current on rule changes and any best practices that are available.
So well said. Yes, absolutely. Government affairs at verbo.com is the email address. If you have any outstanding questions, we'd be happy to help you, and Rent Responsibly will be as well. Thanks so much for being here today, and make sure that you're up to date and connected with your local host alliance.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Mackenzie. Thanks, Alyssa. That was great. I know we deal in regulations all day, every day. Join us, and then we can have a great panel later. All right, let's jump into mastering friendly yet firm guest communication. So throughout this presentation, what I'm going to deliver are things that I learned from direct experience when I was a property manager several years ago at a couple of different companies. I'm going to have lots of templates and lessons learned in here for you. I'm also going to have my teammate Lindsay drop in the chat some things at the end of the presentation that you can copy and paste. So don't worry about taking screenshots or writing things down. You'll get copies of all of this as I go. The reason I want to talk about successful guest communication is not only about some of the nuisance issues or the problems that can happen in short-term rentals that aren't just headaches for you and your guests, but also your city. But good guest communication is key to a successful stay. So you can minimize preventable headaches like issues with noise, parking, and trash, the big three that often come up in short-term rental stays. But you can also build trust, not just your guest trust in you as a host, which is extremely critical, but your trust of that guest who is staying in the property. There are certain things that you can learn about each other only through good communication. So I've got some tips for that. And then the pre-stay period especially is a perfect time to be communicating with your guests in a way that sets the stage for a 5-star stay. So their stay does not begin when they check in. Their stay starts even before they book with you. So I will have tips to optimize all of that for you throughout this presentation. When we talk about guest communication, the most common questions that I often get are things like, how do I answer tough questions without losing a potential booking? Or how do I communicate tough stuff like house rules without making somebody not want to stay in my property? Or if I have somebody who has booked and is coming or is in the property, how do I communicate with them important reminders and things without risking a bad review? Or even worse, ending up on social media like one of those crazy helicopter hosts that nobody wants to be. I've packaged all the things that I've learned into what I call the sprinkle method. And that is 8 strategies for communicating and answering questions in a friendly but firm way. You got to have the balance of both. So, first up, the S stands for succinct. Keep your messaging concise so that important stuff doesn't get buried. How many times have you received a wall of text and not read any of it to the degree that you probably should? Probably often. So, when you've got important things like house rules or reminders, keep it short and sweet. For example, if you've got some limited parking at your property, your house rule could be something like our driveway can accommodate up to X number of vehicles. If you need more parking, here's where to find it. Keep it short, keep it sweet. You don't need to explain something like that in several paragraphs. The P stands for professional. You want to keep your tone business casual and make sure your writing is polished. This applies whether you are a manager hosting many, many properties or you're doing this for the first time and you're just renting out your primary residence. Guests are looking for professional hosts, and you need to communicate that in your writing to set your stay up for success. So, for example, if somebody asks, can I book your home for a friend or relative? One of those tough questions about booking for third parties. You can say, thank you for considering our property, such and such OTA and our insurance policy both prohibit that, but we would be happy to host your friend, your colleague, your relative if they book themselves. Keeping that tone light, business casual will go a long way. Next up, R stands for relatable. Find something to agree with your guests about or connect with them about. This is especially helpful when you have to deliver news they might want to hear. For example, they might want to bring a pet to your property, but if your rule is no pets, you can say something like, we love pets. Unfortunately, due to severe allergies of family members, we are unable to host your furry family members. Don't seem like somebody who hates dogs, even if that's the case, that'll put somebody off. If you tell people you love pets, love dogs, but you just can't host them, that will go a long way. All right. I stands for be instructive. If you need guests to do or not do something in a specific way, make sure your instructions for that are very, very clear. For example, we see a lot of this around pool safety. So one of the things you might want to communicate is to keep all glass away from the pool and ask your guests to please use the pool safe drinkware and tableware in the pantry or wherever you store it. Make that very clear, instructive, and specific. Oh, this one's my favorite, the no but rule. And we use this on our team across everything that we do. Whenever we have to say no to something, you want to make that no clear and final, non-negotiable, but offer an alternative. For example, if somebody asks, can I host a party at your home? First of all, it'd be lovely if they ask. They probably won't. But if they do, you can say something like, hi, so-and-so, that sounds like a really fun trip. We don't host parties or group events here, but take a look at this event venue down the street. Take a look at this other alternative accommodations just down the road that does allow parties. I think they could be a great fit for your needs. The K in sprinkle stands for keep things easy. Don't make it hard for guests to follow what you're asking of them. House rules, desired procedures, checkout lists, whatever it might be. For example, if you don't allow pets on furniture, provide dog beds so that their furry companions have a place to go. If you want guests to recycle, don't make it hard by hiding the recycling can in the garage or out back under the deck. Put it right next to the trash can where they're already disposing of things. Next, this is another one of my favorites, leverage the law and other limitations. This is really handy when you have to talk about things that guests don't want to hear. Again, deflect the things that you didn't create, rules you didn't create, like local laws, septic limits, insurance requirements. It's kind of like, don't shoot the messenger. This is what the city said. I don't want you to get fined. For example, if somebody asks, can we have extra people stay? It's okay if they sleep on the couch or an airbed. And you can say, well, we would love to accommodate more people. The local law limits this home's occupancy. The town, the city, the county, whoever will issue a fine. We recommend a nearby property for hosting additional guests. Hope by now you can start to see some of these strategies being layered on top of each other. They're really handy to put together. I would argue one of the most important parts of guest communication is the E, effective delivery. You have a lot you have to share with your guests. You don't want to put it all in your listing or put it only in your guest guide once they're on site. You want to sprinkle this information when and where guests are going to need it. So, for example, if there are things somebody needs to know before they book, like occupancy, like parking limitations, make sure that's in your listing so that they are aware of what they can and can't do at your property in your rental agreement. And I would also recommend for the World Cup, maybe having an extended World Cup specific agreement. Include things like your noise, parking, and trash policies, amongst all your other policies as well, and make sure that guests are acknowledging those. Before the guest day, this is one of the best opportunities to build excitement with your guests. So during this period of time, you want to be sending out helpful reminders to them, local recommendations. Sprinkled in all of that, you can, remind them about noise hours. You can remind them about parking, because during this time they're going to be doing things like booking their rental cars and things like that. So if you are delivering that information, it's a helpful reminder, and it's going to make their planning better. It's going to make their excitement for the trip better. So weave all that in. And then on site, this is your first opportunity to communicate with other guests in the group besides just the person who booked the reservation. So you want to make sure you've got helpful information on site in signage or little notes left around your property, in your guest book, whatever you use. Apply all of those other principles and make sure you're communicating inside your property as well. So here it is in the summary. Be succinct and be professional, but also relatable. Use the no but rule, be instructive, keep things easy, leverage the law, and use effective delivery. And that will really set your stay up for success. As we went through this, I know you saw a bunch of copy and paste things. We have all of this in an actual format that you can copy and paste. If you go to network.rentresponsibly.org, it's free to join the network. Inside, there are 2 really robust libraries. If you go to articles and guides, you will find house rule templates, you'll find guest communication templates, and all sorts of things in there. So check that out. All right, I'm going to check on my team here. Do we have Nick with us yet? No, we don't. Okay, we are going to pivot. Nick will be here in just a few minutes, so I'm going to throw it over to Blythe instead. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility. The show must go on.
All right. Sorry, getting my presentation pulled up here. There we go. Thanks, Alexa. So as she said, my name is Blythe. I am Rent Responsibly's Director of Marketing. And I'm here to talk about July 20th, 2026. So the day after the final whistle blows. For any new hosts, you've just completed your first major event. And for our experienced operators, you've just managed your busiest month ever. So the question is, was this a one-time transaction, or is this the start of a 10-year business relationship? Today, we're going to ensure it's the latter by mastering guest retention. Our goal is to transform every World Cup traveler into a fan and ultimately into a lifetime customer. Let me show you the 4-stage journey we're targeting. So we're going to think of this as a funnel. At step 1, you have your one-time visitor. These are your World Cup travelers, and they're costing you between 15 and 25% to acquire. At step 2, we have our perfect first stay. So this is your foundation. If you fail here, nothing else is going to matter. At step 3, we have our return visitor. This is the engaged fan who's booking direct. There's an 80% retention potential at this step. This is where the economics are really going to start to work in your favor. And then at step 4, we have our brand advocates. So there's $0 cost to acquire these guests. They're booking repeat stays and they're bringing you referrals. Taking a look at the call out at the bottom of this slide, this is your biggest opportunity, that stage 2 to 3 conversion. Most hosts are doing great getting 5-star reviews, but they're failing at turning that satisfaction into action. So remember, a 5% retention could equal a 20% profit increase. This is where the money is at. Before we talk about bringing guests back, let's talk about protecting your reputation. I think it actually worked perfect that I slid in right after Alexa because she just gave us some great tips on guest communication. Again, to reiterate what she said, go back and use those slides, use those resources we've created, and we're going to really put those into action to help drive a better guest experience and better reviews. 92% of travelers are reading reviews before they're booking. Your online reputation is your business model. I've split this down into 4 pillars. So the first pillar is your review response strategy. I have a clock icon here. You want to respond to every review within 24 hours. So 5-star reviews are getting a thank you, 3-star reviews are getting acknowledgement and resolution. And then any 1-star reviews, those we're going to respond to professionally. We're going to take it offline and we're going to fix the problem. The second is the rating protection. This is the shield. So we want to address any negative feedback proactively. If something went wrong during the stay, don't wait for the review. Reach out immediately, offer a resolution, and turn a potential 1-star into a 5-star recovery story. Third is your social proof building. So this is the star. You want to showcase your best reviews everywhere on social media, on your direct booking sites, on your email signatures, your check-in messages, wherever you want. And a bonus, if you can get any user-generated content from your guests, share that. Ask for it, ask for testimonials, build that credibility. The fourth is your online presence management, and this is the platforms. So just keeping your Google My Business updated, optimizing your OTAs with fresh photos. If you have direct booking sites, again, make sure those reviews are front and center. Your reputation is your retention engine. Protect it like your business depends on it because it does. Sorry, water break. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the guest communication best practices. So this is your tactical playbook for the stage 2 to 3 conversion. At day 1, we really want a review goal. So this should happen within 2 hours of the guest checking out. We want to be sending a message that says something like, "We hoped you enjoyed creating new memories. Thank you for staying with us." You want to get that 5-star review. This is really important because this is your golden hour. So at 2 hours post checkout, that guest is likely in an Uber or at the airport gate. They're still high on the trip experience. If you wait 24 hours, they're back to reality. They're back to emails, they're back to laundry, and all the magic is gone. Use this 2-hour window to capture that emotion. At week 1, we really should have a repeat booking goal. So sending a message that's something like, "We noticed you loved the balcony view. Here's 10% off your next stay." You want to convert that interest into commitment. And it's really important that you include a personalized hook here if you can. Don't just send a generic discount. Mention a specific detail from their stay. So like in the example I just gave you, I mentioned the view that they loved, but you could also mention a local coffee shop or a restaurant they visited. This is going to really provide or really prove that you're not a bot and that you're a host. At month 1, this is a referral goal. So sending something like, "Fall is beautiful here, check out these local events." You want to build your referral engine. International travelers are often only seeing cities during a major event. So you want to use this month 1 checkpoint to show them what the city looks like when the crowds are gone. "Fall is beautiful here" isn't just a line, it's an invitation to a completely different, quieter experience. And then ongoing, we have a loyalty goal. So sending quarterly touch points, saying something like, "It's been a year, come back and see what's new," really build that lifetime value. My rule of thumb is that every email should pass the "so what" test. So if you're not providing a discount or a local tip or a memory, don't send it. We want to stay top of mind, not in the spam folder. If you execute this sequence, that 5% retention target will become achievable. Again, the goal with follow-up comms is to stay top of mind without overwhelming. Make sure that each touch point is adding value. Let's talk about that second pillar on the conversion funnel, which is the foundation, the flawless operations. So April is right now, and it's a critical month. The World Cup starts in June, summer heat is coming, and equipment failures are going to kill retention. So your April action items should be preventative maintenance. We want to be servicing AC units, inspecting appliances, doing any of our final readiness QA, testing Wi-Fi, stocking essentials, verifying compliance, and really making sure that we're guest ready by May 1st. You have 2 weeks left in April still. Do not skip the April maintenance. It's going to be the difference between a 5-star review and a lost customer. Let's look at the numbers, the data slide. So 30 to 40% of short-term rental guests are repeat customers. This is real industry data, and it's 15 to 20 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain a past one. That first booking, you're spending 15 to 25% in platinum fees. With a repeat guest, there's no cost to acquire. The goal should be to let the platform do the marketing for you on the first stay, but the goal of the second stay is to move that guest to your direct booking site if you have one. For experienced managers, a 5% retention could equal a 20% profit margin increase. And then for new hosts, this is how you're going to build a real business. To stand out and drive that stage 2 to 3 conversion, you have to move from being a bed provider to a destination ambassador. Alexa set us up with some great tips during her presentation earlier around preventable headaches. Let's talk a little bit more about those. So I've got some energy optimization tips for you here. A really simple one is just to direct your guests to the official resources for match schedules, fan festivals, and transit information. All of these sites are going to auto update for you, so you don't have to maintain them. If you download your city's specific host readiness kits, we've done the research and found these resources for you, so you can just pull them there. The second is to provide survival essentials. So put yourself into the mindset of the travelers coming from London, for instance. They're not just going to need Wi-Fi, they're going to need reliable Wi-Fi so that they can stream games and talk to their families back home. You want to provide those extra trash bins, like Alexa mentioned, and extra recycling bins for any post-match celebrations. Provide universal adapters, stock coffee, stock laundry detergent, and all the other essentials. These cost you $50 to $100 up front, but they're going to generate those 5-star reviews. And last, reduce friction. So offer jet lag friendly check-in options, early check-in or late checkout for guests arriving from overseas. Provide a transit cheat sheet. So subway maps, train schedules, rideshare pickup zones. Create a late night food map so when a match ends at 10 p.m. and they're hungry, they can find food that's open near them. I know a lot of kitchens close at 10 p.m. So if you can find 2 to 3 local spots that serve food until 2 a.m., you might have just saved their night. When you anticipate these friction points of international travel, the jet lag, the language barriers, the transit confusion, the cultural differences, you're creating an experience that they just can't get at a Marriott. And here's the key. This is the story they're going to share. This is what they're going to post on social media. This is what they're going to tell their friends. And this is why they're going to come back. This is how you become the property that World Cup travelers are recommending to everyone they know. So some final takeaways from my presentation. Takeaway number 1 is that stage 2 to 3 conversion is your biggest opportunity. You want to turn those satisfied guests into return visitors. Takeaway number 2 is that a 5% retention could equal a 20% profit increase. That's the target. Takeaway number 3 is to execute your communications playbook now. Really refine your messaging, figure out what works for you, and how to ask for those reviews. Your priority action item, number 1, is to complete your April preventative maintenance. And number 2 is to launch your day 1 follow-up sequence. Remember, you don't want to just host a fan, you want to host a future regular. That's your mission, and that's how you turn the World Cup into a 10-year revenue stream.
Thanks, Blythe. For those who weren't at our kickoff event, I hope you were. One of the things that I covered was sports tourism as a category. And one of the things that I found really interesting and surprising is that sports tourists as a segment are some of the most likely to revisit that destination and recommend to their friends and family. So heavy plus sign to everything Blythe just said, because this is a prime audience for bringing them back and getting them to send other people to you. So every World Cup stay should lead to several more. All right, with that, we have both of our panelists here for our next segment, which is the defense line, minimizing the risk of major losses. So we've talked a lot about a lot of different things today. And one of the things that's really important is making sure we're buttoning everything up now so that we don't have any major issues, any major bills when the games get here. So with that, welcome Nick Massey from Proper Insurance, and welcome Julie Banting-Rogers from Avalara. It's nice to have you guys here.
Thanks, Alexa.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, Nick, you made me a little sweaty. We were nervous.
Yeah, need to get better at sharing my calendar with other people.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Not my bad.
Let's kick it off with some quick introductions. Julie, you first, then Nick. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your companies.
I'd love to. Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Banting-Rogers. I'm a sales and onboarding executive with Avalara, supporting our product, My Lodge Tax, and I'm local to Orlando, Florida. My job is to work every day with short-term rental hosts and property managers who want to do things the right way without turning into tax or compliance experts. And that's through Avalara. We're a global leader in tax automation. And like I said, My Lodge Tax is our solution built for short-term rental hosts. So we help you register with the jurisdictions, calculate, collect, and file your lodging taxes, and we keep you compliant as rules and rates can change. So instead of guessing what your city or state needs, especially around big events like this, you can hand that tax and compliance piece to us and focus on what you do best, being a great host.
Thanks, Julie. Nick?
Hi, everyone. Nick Massey. I'm the Chief Sales Officer at Proper Insurance. I like to joke a better title is Chief Education Officer, but CEO is already taken, so I don't get that one. What Proper Insurance does is we developed an insurance policy back in 2014, underwritten by Lloyd's of London, as a complete replacement to your current home or condo insurance that's specifically built and designed for short-term rentals. I like to define it as a commercial homeowner's policy. And the reason for that is your standard insurance markets have very explicit business activity exclusions, in which if you make $2,500 or more annually on your property conducting a business, which online advertisement falls under that category, then you can end up having virtually any claim denied. So that's kind of start number one. And then we build that up with a lot of unique coverages for liability, property damage. We invented squatters protection and bed bug and flea remediation. We cover the guest caused damage. We cover liquor liability. I mean, call me crazy. You're probably going to have some World Cup fans that are drinking. You want to make sure you're protected against any claims that arise from that. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Yeah, man, you got my heart rate up when you said squatters and bed bugs. Like those are my worst nightmares. I don't rent this house, but I still want proper insurance. So maybe you can insure this place, even though I don't short-term rent. As I hope everybody here knows, short-term renting always carries some risk, right? But especially around the World Cup and big destination events like this, like Coachella and the Olympics and all these big, huge things, these aren't normal hosting conditions. These are sometimes once in a lifetime trips for people. They're high emotion, positive and negative. They're staying longer. They're spending almost twice as much. From your perspective, we'll start with Nick and then Julie. How does this change a host's liability?
So whether you're just getting into this, and this is your kind of first go around, and you're like, I'm going to test the waters with a big event, and then if it goes really well, maybe I'll stick in. Maybe I've been doing this a long time. What the big fundamental change here is vacation brain. And so you have people traveling either from the US, it could be, coming from Florida to LA to Seattle, to the areas where the World Cup is on the West Coast. And yeah, they just spend all day traveling. They have all these stuff. They have so much going on. And it just takes one little thing within your property to cause a problem. Most of our slip and fall liability claims that we deal with happen within the first 24 hours of the guest arriving to your property. It starts to diminish after that. But add on other amenities. I mean, add on a pool, add on traveling with kids, traveling with pets. You have the playground equipment. Has mom and dad been out there to kind of chaperone and overwatch the kids a little bit? Is your pool set up for success? Do you have life preservers in varying sizes? Do you have depth markers? Do you have signage? Do you have rescue equipment? Are you setting these guests up for success while also having the best experience at your property? A lot of stuff goes overlooked when we just kind of jump into this industry. A big one is handrails. You know, are your porches and stairs inside, outside? Are they equipped with a handrail? You don't know the age and physical abilities of these folks who are coming to your home. The other thing here, and let's kind of end on this, is do you have amenities at your property that just are so much risk they just shouldn't be there? And so a good litmus test is on Airbnb and VRBO specifically, if it is not a searchable amenity, as far as somebody can filter to find your property with that amenity, then it simply shouldn't be at your home. They've identified that those shouldn't be amenities at properties, and so you should follow suit. And insurance follows suit on that as well. So trampoline and zip line, let's say, you can't search that on Airbnb. If you have a swimming pool, you can't search diving board. You can just search swimming pool. And so you got to get rid of those amenities because they're just unnecessary risk to have set up at your home.
Yeah. I think that's all such a great point. I think, we think about things like trampolines and those big wild amenities, and the risk there feels a little bit more obvious than the stuff that we tend to forget to think about, like handrails and depth markers and things like that. One of my favorite tips that I'm stealing from Tyann Marsink Hammond and Tim Cafferty is a sleep through, not just a walkthrough of your property, but sleep there like you are a guest for one night and see those things that somebody might experience while they have vacation brain. Like, is there a nightlight to help them find the bathroom in the middle of the night? Are your handrails properly anchored if somebody doesn't quite know where a step is or just simply needs them? I love that practice. And if I was renting, and when I was renting in the past, that was an absolute must. Julie, on the tax side, how does something like the World Cup change liability there?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, right? The liability in my world in Avalara with compliance, it doesn't necessarily change. What you see is more scrutiny from the jurisdictions. When there is a major event, World Cup, Coachella, name any of them again, it doesn't just increase your bookings. You're increasing the number of people who want to short-term rent. You've got new hosts. And there's a lot of tax money that's coming into your state and local jurisdictions. So all we're really increasing is visibility and scrutiny. Cities know that they're about to see a surge in short-term rentals. And so there's already stepped up enforcements around things like the required permits. We heard Expedia talk about some of those, and the correct lodging tax collection and remittance. Spoiler alert. California leaves it down to the counties. Every single jurisdiction is different in California. Your neighbor may have something different. On top of that, you also have higher nightly rates, longer stays, so more tax there. And the financial risk is way up. This all can get very expensive very quickly if you're not set up on the front end. Real quick, California did just pass SB 346, which allows cities and counties to require the platforms to hand over detailed data on your local listings, your address, your URLs, your licenses, your tax certificate numbers. This is that scrutiny we're seeing. They can require regular reporting, audits, and some counties have fines of up to $10,000 per day if you get it wrong. So that means during your major event, it's very easy for a city to spot who's not properly registered or handling their transient occupancy taxes correctly. So that's just where you can automate, make sure you've got all of your facts in a row, because these profits that you're looking for may diminish very quickly.
Oh yeah. I was talking to your teammate Max in our kickoff event, and I asked, what is the largest surprise tax bill somebody's ever seen in his experience. He said something over 6 figures. And once you start getting into the tax details, you can see how easily that happens. I don't know if this is the case anywhere on the West Coast, but there's places here where, for example, the platforms will collect and send it in for you, but you still have to fill out a report, even if it's $0. And a lot of people don't know that and then get those fines racking up without them even knowing that. So I share that not to scare anybody, but to just remind us all of why we need to be looking at taxes and keeping our receipts, as they say, to make sure that we can justify everything with this additional scrutiny right now. I'll also point out this is an incredible opportunity for the short-term rental community as a whole to show our value, especially in the tax revenue, but also in the fact that we are expanding available accommodations for times like this that benefit the entire community. So as long as we're all dotting our T's or dotting our I's, crossing our T's, do that the right way around, that can help prevent worse regulation in the future and make our cities and our counties see us as a value and not as this thing that needs to be kept at bay, right?
Great
Nick,
point.
you touched on this a little bit, but one of the things that is really important for the World Cup is we know, especially of international travelers, 74% of them are bringing kids. And that's a huge opportunity and a huge potential risk. Knowing this, what are some of the most common blind spots somebody should be watching out for in their property when it comes to kids?
When it comes to children, the two primary areas is the number one most recalled product in the world is baby and toddler equipment. So if you're planning on having high chairs and, I have 3 small children. I should know the names of all these things. The little bouncy seats, right? Cribs, you name it. I see a lot of laughing faces. My wife buys it all, so I don't know what they are. So there's the most recalled product. So the best way to do that is whatever product you are purchasing. If you're like, hey, I'm going to set up a room for small children, whatever product you end up buying, Amazon, Walmart, whatever, I don't care where it comes from, check consumer product safety. You can register the item through Consumer Product Safety to get updates. There could be a recall that comes 1 week into your new hosting venture on that piece of baby equipment. If you're saying, I don't even want to go down that route, I highly recommend that you give these travelers with children the option to rent equipment from a company called Baby Quip, QUIP, Baby Quip. They handle everything, delivery, setup, all of it. Kind of takes you out of the potential liabilities of a recalled product. Another popular amenity being bunk beds. What we see a lot of hosts do with bunk beds is, one, it doesn't have the appropriate level of height between the railing and the mattress. You have to have 5 inches. That's federal code. If you're not meeting that, you open yourself up for a very easy case with an injury attorney. We also see a lot of bunk beds that are stacked in front of egress windows or in rooms with ceiling fans. Don't do that. That's a dangerous situation. The other thing is fully operational and working smoke detectors. You should have smoke detectors in every bedroom. Young children and drunk people, they kind of act the same. They don't hear the decibel levels of fire alarms very well. And so checking what your product that you have for the decibel rating, anything over, I believe it's 88 decibels is what is a lot better. And so make sure that you have those in case something goes wrong. The other thing that we see is missed quite a bit is fire extinguishers that are easy to get to. A lot of folks don't like putting a fire extinguisher on the wall. They like to stick it underneath the cabinet under the sink. But if these folks are cooking in your home and they have a kitchen fire, they're not going to go rummaging through cabinets to find the fire extinguisher. So by placing it on the wall in a bracket, you give these guests an opportunity to save your property.
Yeah. Heavy plus sign to everything you just said. If you are concerned about things like this, which you should be, check out or definitely do a consult with Proper, but also check out the safety course from Justin Ford at Breezeway. It is a eye-opening and fantastic resource to make sure you are buttoning up all these things. And I'll also point out on the fire extinguishers, especially, yes, out in the open, accessible, not matter if it doesn't look all that great design-wise. That is not what's important. But they do have compact and different colored ones that you can get now if that's important to you. So check those out. There are a ton of resources on that kind of stuff in Justin's safety course.
Companies make wraps, vinyl wraps that go around your fire extinguisher now, so you can design it however you want. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Julie, what about you? What are some potential blind spots when it comes to tax stuff?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that we see hosts make is the assumption that everything is handled by your platform or your marketplace, especially if they're remitting your tax dollars. In reality, this responsibility is often shared. Platforms may collect some taxes, but not all. Your coverage varies by the state, city, and sometimes even type of tax. And even if let's say the platform is remitting all of your tax dollars, I think you touched on this earlier, Alexa, you may have to file a filing. And people miss this every day. I speak to hosts who miss this. Like I said, during the World Cup events of those nature, many hosts are bumping up their booking platforms. Some people are using platforms that are more targeted to an international audience, something like a booking.com. But those platforms have completely different rules than Airbnb and VRBO. One platform will collect a city tax, one platform will collect a state tax, one platform won't connect anything. And those rules change not only over time, but how you're internally set up to process payments. So these things are all tiny little nuances. And then, of course, the registration piece. I don't want to hammer it. We had Expedia do their presentation. I already mentioned it, but we don't want you to face fines, have to do any back taxes, or have your listing pulled last minute, just because there's more of those audits and listing sweeps from different jurisdictions. But I do want to just bring up one specific example. People love to quote the master's rule at times like this. If y'all don't know, it's an IRS rule. It lets homeowners who rent fewer than 14 days not have to report the income on their federal tax return. That hosts I see assume that it means you can skip your state and local lodging taxes as well. This is not true. Your state and local lodging taxes are paid by your guest and they need to make it to the jurisdiction. So you still have to register, collect, and file, even if you're only going to do one stay, 2 stays during this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen so many. It's like, yeah, every single place has a different way of charging taxes, calculating taxes, collecting them, all those things. There's also in a lot of places, I cannot speak to any of the cities represented here, so don't quote me on this for your specific town, but there are places that have additional things that are called fees instead of taxes. That's how cities get things that are tax-like passed if they can't pass a tax. And sometimes those things apply to short-term rentals. Sometimes you have to have a certain type of license. You have to register for a license to then pay taxes. It's messy, it's complicated, and yeah, you can miss stuff really easily. So again, talk to your local resources, talk to Avalara, do your research, make sure everything is all buttoned up there. All right, I'm going to do a rapid fire here, and then we might have time for a couple questions from the chat. So what is your go-to resource that you recommend to hosts who are hosting for the first time or their first big destination event? Nick, I'm gonna throw that one to you first.
Regulations. So Rent Responsibly, we have a resource on our website. Make sure you can do it first. And if you need to get permitted to do it, all of that stuff. And then what those permits require, and a lot of them require insurance. So start there. And then if you can do it, then reach out to us because we're going to go through everything with you. I mean, the regulatory side, we're going to do, we'll double check on that. But we're also just going to go through what you're offering and your online listing and how you need to protect yourself and give you, tips and guide you through the best way to protect yourself at your property while still providing a fun environment. We don't want you to wrap it in bubble wrap and not have anybody do anything. But the best way to have a great house, an amazing listing that people are driven to go and stay at and pay you money, and at the same time protecting you in ways that no other company can.
Thanks, Nick. I do think somebody should wrap their house in bubble wrap. I think that'd be one of those like really
Justin Ford probably does.
He probably does. All right, Julie, what's your favorite resource?
I'll give you my least favorite resource first.
Okay.
Please don't crowdsource your compliance from Reddit or Facebook or any of those. Please use a location-specific trusted resource like, I'm pretty sure Max tossed his hair at this part the other day, like Avalara's free tax research tools. And if it's not our tools, it's Rent Responsibly's, it's your local Rent Responsibly chapters that are around the area. But if you don't want to do it yourself, please get some help and let us automate your registrations, your filings, your payments so you know it's done right and your profits aren't turning into penalties.
Right. Yeah. It could very quickly go from a really profitable, fun experience to wiping all that out, undoing all your hard work, having a really expensive bill, both on the tax side and on the insurance side. I will gladly recommend these two companies as resources. They've been partners of ours for a long time for a very good reason. And a lot of us on the team use these products. So definitely check out Avalara's. I've got a bunch of tools. They're my go-to for anything tax related. And Nick is my personal go-to for anything insurance related, but don't call Nick, call his team. They are extremely helpful. I've met almost all of them and they are lovely, helpful people. I can help you with your specific property coverage. So please do that. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Julie. Julie said something a second ago that I want to double click on while we bring up our next session. Julie recommended joining your local or state association, and I would highly, highly recommend that because your local or state association for short-term rentals is your local experts. They can help you. There is no question too basic for them to handle. And they are doing all sorts of great work protecting your right to rent, getting you resources that are very specific to your town, your county, your state. So with that, let me bring up my teammate, Dana Lubner. She is going to take us through our last session, which is a great panel with several people from the Washington Host Collaborative Alliance. Dana, take it away.
Thanks, Alexa. And great to be here. So we're now going to move into our panel. And so far, we've been talking about regulations. I'm sure that may not be everyone's favorite topic. Both Julie and Nick made insurance and tax compliance fun. Bravo to them. We've talked about pricing, guest communications, and now we're going to get to the part that I personally find my favorite. So I'm honored to be here with our panelists to be talking about these topics with you all. So as you know, Seattle is a World Cup host city, and hopefully that's why you're here. And this means that there are a lot of Washington hosts right now who are either really excited, maybe a little anxious, or very easily somewhere in between. And so what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes is introduce you to the organization that exists specifically to make sure you're not navigating any of this alone. Just as a refresher, if I haven't met you before, I'm Dana Lubner with Rent Responsibly. And with me today, we have three leaders from the Washington Host Collaborative Alliance. Acronym is WACA. We've got Danielle Dixon, Executive Director, Allison Moser, President, and one of WACA's founding board members, and then Sean Reed, board member and host. So we're going to get into it. Allison, this first question we've got is for you. So you were one of the people who actually built WACA from the ground up. I remember those days and those conversations we were having. So I want to start with you. For someone watching today who's never heard of WACA, maybe they're brand new to hosting or they've been hosting for a few years and just didn't know the organization existed. Give me the elevator pitch. What is WACA and why does it matter?
Okay, thank you so much, Dana. Uh, in a nutshell, WACA is here to help the industry, the hosts and property managers and related businesses to do the best that we can and be the best that we can. And what I mean by that is we want to help everyone maximize their earnings. We want to help them to operate in as friendly and welcoming an environment as possible. And we want to help them achieve excellence in the product that they're providing. So I kind of feel like we're still a baby organization. We started kind of in an emergent situation going into the 2025 state legislative session. There was a narrative going on around the state that we felt was getting legs, that short-term rentals are causing the affordable housing crisis. And there were some leaders in the legislature that wanted to enact some punitive laws against the short-term rental industry. And so I have a saying that I like to use, which is if you don't have a seat at the table, it might be because you're on the menu. And we really wanted to get a seat at the table. We needed to get organized quickly. And both of the big platforms, VRBO and Airbnb, really helped us get a jump start by reaching out to everybody who was listed on their platforms, letting them know that we were forming, giving them a link, and encouraging them to join us. And that helped us so much that we have gone through 2 legislative sessions now and have fought off, warded off, prevented punitive bills from being passed into law. So now that we have those 2 sessions under our belt, we're really focusing on offering a strong educational opportunities for our members. We have a robust educational calendar of monthly webinars. And we're also looking at reaching out at the local level to build relationships in our local communities and provide that welcoming environment.
And you're a volunteer, right?
Correct.
Wow, like that just deserves the like pregnant pause right there, like mic drop. Um, that is incredible what you guys have accomplished. And I would say it feels like you're in your infancy because it wasn't that long ago you got started, but just look at all of the things you guys have accomplished in just a few years. That is incredible. Bravo. So thanks to Allison
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, it's definitely worth acknowledging. I don't think it gets acknowledged enough the amount that volunteers do to protect and make a sustainable environment for this industry, especially in Washington. So we now know who Waka is, and now I'd like to shift a little bit to talk about the moment we're actually in because the World Cup brings a spotlight on Seattle that not everyone is going to love. So, Danielle, you're the executive director of Waka, and you actually live in Seattle. So you see this from both sides. Why does it matter to hosts to show up as good neighbors right now? And what does that actually look like in practice? How do we make sure Seattle actually likes us after the World Cup is over?
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, excellent question. I mean, we want to create community and we don't want to create any friction within our communities. And so while the short-term rental industry is a hospitality industry, and it's hospitality not just to your guests, but also to your neighbors. And so there's a few things to kind of keep in mind. I am excited to be on the West Coast. I spent many years living in San Diego and driving around LA. Driving in Seattle is completely different. You're not going 85 miles per hour, but we have really weird roads. You can park both directions. There's a lot of things that if you are not a local, it just feels really weird. And with the parking on like both sides of the street, it ends up being one lane. So there's just these like subtle nuances of how you navigate that. There's not a lot of stop signs. It's really a communal like approach to driving. And I think that that's something when we have a lot of visitors in town that are not familiar with those kind of norms. I think giving them a little bit information about that, encouraging public transportation. We heard about a little bit from, Nick at Proper about how, people will be drinking, some accidents can kind of happen, or like there can be some noise. So you want your neighbors to be able to reach out to you and to not to have to escalate to, say, the police or something like that. You want there to be some mechanism to be able to escalate issues so that you as a host can address them. So informing your neighbors that you're going to be having guests, being available in case anything goes wrong, that's really going to make you a good neighbor. Um, and then also, I think just making sure that the occupancy levels are really reasonable in your properties as well. The sprinkle method, I think Alexa did a great job of kind of talking through some of those norms and setting some of those rules. And that can be one of them, because if you have too many people that are in one area, that's going to kind of cause friction with the neighbors. And so being respectful with communication of issues and also just getting your guests ready to be able to navigate the weird streets that we have here and be able to get around the city.
I just learned something new. I live in Denver and I'm coming to Seattle next month, which I'm so excited about. Fortunately, I don't think I'm going to be driving a car. But the idea that it's acceptable to park the same direction on either side of the street, like not you don't see that everywhere, and that's something you don't know, especially if we have international travelers coming to the state where they may drive on another side of the road or they're not used to those norms. So I think it's a great tip um, to make it simple, but to also communicate things that you maybe take for granted. And I think it's so valuable to just reiterate the fantastic point you made about sometimes it's uncomfortable to tell your neighbors that you're short-term renting, but to go ahead and let them know because that's going to be your most proactive move that you can make so that they're not caught off guard and it doesn't create bad blood on the block. So I love those really excellent tips. Sean, let's flip this because I think there's a lot of noise out there, and hosts are either overthinking some things or completely missing others. So I'm curious from your perspective, what are one or two things Washington hosts are over preparing for right now? And what are one or two things that are dangerously being ignored?
Thank you for that. I honestly, I think one of the biggest things that people um, are over preparing for is to make gobs and gobs of money. And I just, I think, as a property manager who manages, 20 properties, I think the biggest thing somebody can do if you're going to do this is to not just assume, like, if you look on Airbnb or Verbo and see another house, like maybe you're a one bedroom or maybe you're renting a room and you're looking at a couple houses and are looking at their price, be cognizant of what that price is giving that person. Are they, do they have 300 reviews and they're all 5-star reviews and there's a game room and there's all this other kind of stuff? They may be getting that price because they've earned that price over the last 5 years, and it may just be the price they're always getting. There's going to be a bump for World Cup, but I think the responsible thing to do would be to build a comp set, and then once your comp set is built, look through the details of all those, the pictures, the descriptions, all that, and make sure that you're priced accordingly. And then I think and it was brought up earlier, I think the thing that people are really ignoring, dangerously ignoring, is that there's going to be a lot of foreign travelers. I mean, I have 20 houses here in Chelan and Leavenworth, and 80% of my clients, 80% of my renters come from Seattle. And so, I know who my client is. I think there's going to be a lot of international stuff. So be prepared for that. Be prepared with Google Translate. Be prepared. And I think Allison brought it up, or Danielle brought it up, excuse me, I help people get around, build something, whether you use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, help people be able to transport themselves, so they're not helpless once they get there.
Such good tips. And yeah, I think the point you make about any tool where you're looking at price comparison or how do I price my property, that tool can only go so far to really
Mhm.
analyze on a deeper level that's required.
Mhm.
It's the same goes with, reading articles or educating yourself. Don't just read the headlines. Like actually take a second to read what the article says. Same goes for when pricing your property. Like really look at the comparison. So I love that you said, is that listing getting priced at that rate because they're a super host or they've been hosting for years and they have that review metric? That's something to consider when thinking about this, so you don't lose the opportunities that are in front of you. All right, so I want to make sure we're talking to all of Washington here, not just Seattle proper. So, Allison, WACA isn't just a Seattle organization. We've got hosts in Tacoma, Spokane, out on the peninsula, and places where the World Cup energy might feel far away. What's your message to hosts who are wondering if any of this even applies to them? And how is WACA making sure they're connected and not figuring this out alone?
Well, I think one thing is just to educate the hosts around the state, kind of like we have to do in our whole country. Compared to the rest of the world, soccer hasn't necessarily been as big on our radar screen. And so I think a lot of hosts around our state, particularly myself, I have to admit, I did not really understand how the World Cup was organized. You know, we had a basis for comparison a few years back where we had at the Chambers Bay Golf Course, we had the Pinnacle golfing event. And so everyone was saying, well, we were all booked out a year in advance before that Chambers Bay came up, and everyone got 4 times the price, you know, for their rental homes. So just understanding that there are multiple markets where the World Cup is going on, that people may be following specific teams and they don't necessarily even know where those teams will be playing until it gets a lot closer up. So what we've seen, and we have a lot of social media presence, a lot of email chatter, Facebook chatter, where hosts are commenting and sharing what their experiences have been. And everyone's like, well, you know, last January we quadrupled our rates and we haven't gotten a single booking. There's crickets. So now we're dropping them, dropping them, dropping them. This is a big bust. Just to understand that the cadence of inquiries and bookings and pricing and cancellation might be totally different than what we're expecting if we don't understand how this sport is organized. We're trying to fill that role. The other thing that we've been doing, when you look at expanding out from Seattle and King County into surrounding counties and around the states, is we want to take advantage of the opportunity of letting people know who are coming here, enticing them to extend their stay beyond a specific game and expand their Washington experience to all the great destinations and experiences that we have. And for example, we have been connecting with other groups that are organized to promote tourism. A lot of them are maybe funded by lodging tax dollars. For example, Visit Tacoma Pierce County or Discover Lewis County. We've been talking with folks like that, and they have in Pierce County, they have developed a concept called fan zones where they're trying to almost like a scavenger hunt, draw guests out into the surrounding areas and put little teasers around the county to bring guests to patronize those things. And I think Alexa mentioned earlier about the opportunity that this gives us to form new relationships and to let sort of the traditional tourism groups see that we're a huge asset and feather in their cap to help bring visitors, bring revenue, and showcase the surrounding communities. So we've been really focusing on that, and hopefully we're gonna see the benefit long term.
I just love so much of what you said. I love looking beyond just point A to point B and thinking about how can we bring benefits to our surrounding communities outside of Seattle and looking at the tourism boards. Great timing for introduction. I can't imagine that they're not doing all the types of things you mentioned, a scavenger hunt and more, to ensure that they get folks to extend their stay beyond just the event itself and to explore other parts of Washington. It's such a beautiful area, and I think if you're going to make time to attend the World Cup event, it's worth your time to also be exploring all the other great places. So I love to hear that. All right, so Danielle, this next question is for you. Let's get into the goods a bit here. What are some of the specific resources Washington hosts can access through WACA right now as they get ready for the World Cup? Walk us through what's available, both the free stuff and what members of WACA get.
Yeah, this has obviously been a very big event that has been on our radar. So we focused a lot at the beginning of this year on getting through the legislative session without any new taxes. And then we've really pivoted to preparing for this event and providing our community with resources to help them prepare. We are hosting monthly educational webinar series, the third Wednesday of every month at noon. We have kicked off kind of a webinar series. And so we have hosted two of those so far. Our first one was with an expert, from Key Data Dashboard. And so he pulled a ton of metrics about what the booking trends were actually looking like in the city of Seattle and the surrounding areas. And so I think that's where, Allison kind of referred to this a little bit, that we're seeing a little bit of a delay in some of those bookings. And he was able to explain a lot of the reasons why and how the World Cup actually operates. People are waiting to see where their teams end up in the semifinals so that they can book that. So those are some of those things that we can give you and kind of share that there's actually data behind that. So there's that little bit of community and kind of understanding. Yesterday, we actually hosted a safety webinar with Justin Ford, who was mentioned earlier today. And he brought a lot of attention to a lot of those overlooked safety concerns. And so as you have more people coming in, making sure that you're protected and covered, it was really interesting to hear a lot of what he raised yesterday reiterated and what Nick was saying with proper insurance about some of that baby equipment, things that you think are a really great offer, but could potentially be a bit of a risk area. And so we want to bring that information to our community. And so all of these webinars are free. Our members do get access to recordings of any of those webinars. So we have a backlog that we upload into our member portal. And so all of the slide decks, all of the recordings, they're available there. So you can always go back in time if there's a topic that's of interest to you. We also really try to share some solid information in the monthly newsletter. So this has been a theme. We always include some news you can use and some kind of like community information. And so something that we had shared in a previous newsletter was that the public transportation here in Seattle was changing so that you could pay digitally or with credit cards. And so that's going to make it a lot easier for travelers who may not have an Orca card that they would have to buy and use. So that makes things a lot easier. And that's the kind of information that we're highlighting. So getting on our newsletter list, getting on our subscriber list, we're sending out those monthly newsletters. And if there's just something like pertinent that we need to get out, we will send off one-off emails as well. We did a little bit more of that throughout the legislative session, and we're kind of approaching it in the same way for education and also the World Cup.
Just once it gets up over that overfill.
Uh-oh.
Awesome. Well, I think we're
And this
seeing
is
live.
the life of a property manager.
Yeah. It never stops. I love it. Hey, full no worries
Yeah, no, I
there.
love it. We're starting. It's pool opening season, so sorry.
No worries. Well, you came back in perfect time because I've got a question for you here. So, Waka and Danielle, let me just at least reflect here because the amount of value that you are bringing your members and the community members in Washington is tremendous between being a one-stop shop for your community to go for news that's relevant, changes that you need to communicate to your guests, best practice when it comes to safety, professionalizing, understanding the data, how to be the most savvy short-term rental host or property manager operator you can be. That is the reason that state associations exist. And like Allison said, they give you a seat at the table. And not everyone has time to do what Allison and Sean are doing by volunteering their hours. We've got Danielle as the executive director. So if you're thinking, I don't have the time to do this, but I'm willing to be a member of this association, that is a very valuable role that we need you to play. Sean, Waka clearly cares about host professionalism, and I'm sure you do as well. Clearly, he's professional. He answers a call. He doesn't slide on business. What does this actually mean to you and Waka? And if you could wave a magic wand and give every first-time host one specific pro skill overnight, just one, what would it be?
One, just one. I think if I could wave a magic wand, one of the things that I would really recommend or really have every host do, whether you're renting out a room, a small house, or a big house, is be the most professional property. See yourself as a property manager. I've gone to I rented an Airbnb about a year ago, and granted, it was just me, my wife, and two kids, and we were literally researching Airbnbs in the area because I was looking at trying to buy one. And the house that we rented slept 10 people, and there was three wine glasses. you know that doesn't work. And there was like Christmas flannel sheets on instead of the crisp white sheets. And so my recommendation, if I could wave a wand to everybody, is look at, and there's plenty of ways to do this, whether it's AirDNA or Price Labs or whatever you do to build your comp set, or even if you could do it manually by looking at Airbnb and Verbo. But look at the just type in the stuff that your house or your rental has, and look at the top ones, right? What are they doing that you're not doing? What does their description say? Like, we every 3 months we'll take all of our comp sets and we'll go to Airbnb and Verbo, pull all their reviews, put them into ChatGPT, and say, what is everybody saying about this house? And if my house doesn't have that, I'm getting it. So dance according to the music being played, but know who your competition is, and raise yourself up to that level.
Dance according to the music that's being played. I have not heard that one, but it's like know
That
your
was
audience.
that was my old retail sales days, because I used to sell mobile electronics, and if you're selling to this person or selling to this person, you gotta dance according to the music being played.
Yeah, get to know your guest and get to know what they expect and get to know what the best practices are so you can position your property to be playing with the people out there you might consider your competition. So
Correct.
super awesome advice that you're giving here. I love that. I think it's easy for somebody to forget that there's opportunity to leverage. There's a ton of resources that are there. You mentioned looking at Price Labs and AirDNA. Those are two great resources. They have tools where you can run and learn about what is another 2 bed, 1 bath right within your area, where you can click on those listings, see what stands out, look at those reviews, leverage AI. I think that's fantastic. So Danielle, I'm going to ask you, I believe it's our last question before we do rapid fire. So everyone get ready as we wrap today's panel. Pretend I'm a brand new host in Seattle. I just listed my home for the World Cup. I'm a little nervous and I don't know what I don't know. Sell me on why joining Waka makes sense and what's actually in it for me if I do.
Yeah. We've talked about it kind of throughout this panel, but we really are a one-stop shop. So if you're new to this, we are monitoring all the things that are going on. We're monitoring the events that might drive more tourism. We're monitoring, earlier this year, we had some really severe flooding and had some road damages. And so like how to navigate through that. We have information about what's happening locally. And so I think that's what you get from a state alliance rather than just, there are great national resources as well. But when you get to the state level, we really get to the issues that are affecting you and your homes and properties. We also offer that seat at the table. So if there are, legislative bills that are coming through that might negatively impact short-term rental hosts, we have a community that can come down there and testify. And so we don't need you to go down to Olympia to testify. We want to aggregate what our community of hosts is experiencing and highlight that to the legislators in a very respectful and collaborative way. We were really successful this year Allison and a couple of our other board members went down and participated on a panel. They talked a lot about who are the guests at short-term rentals, who are the hosts. Most of our hosts are individual owner operators, and over 50% of the visitors and the guests in the state of Washington are from the state of Washington. And so adding new fees would negatively impact Washingtonians. And so bringing more of that information is something that we can do and speak on your behalf without needing thousands of people to go down and enter their voices. We can kind of be on your behalf to advocate for this industry. We also have a lot of educational resources. And so as things are coming up, we will be sharing that. We also, I think the thing that's most special about our board is that everyone is volunteers, but they care so much. We've gotten some great questions that have come through our inbox, and we have been able to connect people with board members that have expertise. So, and have them connect and share some information. Our board's willing to do that. I'm managing that inbox. We've started to get a lot of, that two-way street of communication of, hey, there's something going on in this community. I don't know how to handle it. Well, now it's on our plate and we can help address it on your behalf. So really, we are a voice for the people in the short-term rental industry, and really want to magnify their experience and be able to share that and be able to make them really successful as hosts as well. I think that that's what Allison spoke to a little bit at the beginning is we want successful hosts and we want to be integrated well in the community. And as an organization, that's what we're fighting to do. And, we've built a pretty strong reputation as we've done that in our first, year and a half.
Yeah, it's really hard to believe it's just been a year and a half because that's a lot. And the amount that you've grown and the value that you're bringing and the opportunity to connect directly with board members and to level up because we know for a lot of hosts, it can be a very lonely world. You're kind of just in guest communications, needing to be on call at all hours. Like there, it can be very siloing. So to know that there's a community that you can connect with and a sense of belonging, I think that's such a beautiful thing, and you guys should be so proud. So we've got just a minute left. We're going to do rapid fire. Allison, I'm going to start with you. One sentence. What's the one thing you tell attendees to do this week or even this day?
I would say get on a social platform and see what the other hosts are chatting about so that, like you said, you don't feel like you're alone in the world. You don't know if whether you're a one-off or what you're experiencing is a common thread throughout the community. I think that's the most productive thing you can do is plunge into the group and see what's happening.
Great advice. All right, Danielle, over to you, and then Sean will take us home.
All right. I'm going to make a plug for Washington Host Collaborative Alliance. We are looking to grow and we need member support and we want to give back to our members. So today we have a discount code. It's Game On 50. That gets you $50 off your first year of membership for any new members. So I would encourage everyone to become a member in WACA and really lean into some of the resources that we have to provide.
50% off. I did not know this, so this is genuine.
$50 off.
$50. I think either way, I didn't know that, but that is a fantastic discount. So much value. It's like what, one night's worth of rental for some folks, depending on your property. That's incredible. All right, Sean, take us home.
I would encourage kind of a little bit of both of those. Get involved and find like-minded social media groups. There was a whole thing going around all social media the last 48 hours about Airbnb's host fee changing. They're going back and forth, and just those kind of things helps you navigate it, and then. Obviously, the joining of WACA, I think we're so in our infancy stage, and we have so many big plans, through education and even getting to that point where, like if somebody wants to buy an Airbnb, what are the right financing tools you should be using? What are the right tax strategies? All those kind of things that we're going to grow into as an organization, is really going to be beneficial for everyone, for the small person to, somebody on our board manages 120 properties. So, there's just a lot of information that we're going to be able to provide as we move forward as an organization. So joining Walk-Eyes, I think, shameless plug, but it's going to be invaluable to somebody.
I love that. Awesome, awesome, awesome advice. I can't thank you all so much for spending your time with us, sharing all these pro tips. And if you've come on to this webinar to learn about how to become a better host for the World Cup, you may very easily find yourself being a host beyond the World Cup. And if you even have interest in joining these fabulous folks who are on the panel, that could be a future for you as well. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah.
Alexa, over to you.
Thanks, Dana. All right, we have reached the end of this event, but that does not mean the resources end here. There are several things to do from here. All of the speakers today pointed out great things to be looking into and checking and joining. Here are some that I would recommend. First, download your host readiness kit. We've got one customized to every host city. And it is available for everybody here on gameon2026.rentresponsibly.org. Head to your city's page, download that guide. There are all sorts of fillable checklists and templates and additional resources that actually answer a lot of the questions that were in chat today. So check those out. Stay connected with us on social. We just had a bunch of great recommendations for social. Wherever you're hanging out, we are probably hanging out too. So come find us. And as we've stated a few times throughout today, join your area alliance. If that's WACA, great. If that's another group, also great. If there isn't one in your area, talk to us about how to start one. But first, check the map at rentresponsibly.org/alliances. There's lots of great groups out there, and they are all waiting for you, eager to welcome you. So join them. Finally, I have to thank our Game On partners. I don't have to thank them. I get to thank them. They are wonderful organizations. They are partners for a reason. They provide a ton of value and resources. So check them out. Expedia Group, Furbo, Proper Insurance, Avalara, Truvi. We didn't hear from Truvi today, but if you watch some of our other event replays, you'll see tons from them as well. And then just keep an eye on gameon2026.rentresponsibly.org for a lot more. There's a lot more prep time to go up to the games, so there will be a lot more coming. In the meantime, thank you for coming today. We appreciate your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day.